From unidentifiable masses of meat and deep-sea horrors to confusing mass strandings, these are the creepiest sea creatures to wash up on shore. First, healthy great whites. When we think of animals being washed ashore, we often think of old and sick fish that can't resist the tide, or fish that get caught in a storm. In general, they have something wrong with them. But on October 5th of 2023, a large 14-foot great white was seen struggling and thrashing in Cape Breton waters before being stranded. This was the most recent in a disturbing string of seemingly healthy great whites washing up on Canadian shores. Even after an extensive autopsy and investigation, no reason was found for a large and apparently healthy shark to be stranded like this. Some have raised concerns, as in 2022 there was only one great white that washed up, whereas in 2023 there were more than 5. This sort of uptick in strandings is not normal or natural, and has caused many environmentalists some serious concern. How and why was this shark washed up? It had injuries, but they were all old and healed. It was well fed, it didn't have any trauma, and passed all disease tests. The mystery is still out there. Next is the whale fall. On the 16th of July 2023, something gut-wrenching happened. Beachgoers were shocked, and local officials and rescue workers went into overdrive when 55 pilot whales washed up on the Isle of Lewis. The entire pod had beached itself and had already suffered heavily. It was determined that one mother had a very difficult birth, which led to her being washed ashore and stranded. But pilot whales are deeply social animals and do not abandon one another. It's believed the rest of the pod either intentionally beached themselves or were staying close in shallow water and were accidentally beached. 15 whales were alive when rescue workers and medics arrived, but due to the excessive amount of trauma, only one could be successfully saved and returned to the water, making this one of the single largest mass whale death events in history.
We normally see a single whale, the very occasional group of a small number, but this is certainly my biggest number I've ever seen in a single stranding.
Next is the globster monster. Recently, a massive lump of decaying flesh washed up in Papua New Guinea, and no one knows what it is. These gelatinous masses of decaying matter do wash up every now and again and are known as globsters, being essentially impossible to identify or recognize. This particular one happened to look quite a bit like a mermaid, which raised a lot of excitement, despite the fact it is almost certainly some sort of whale, seal, dugong, or other marine mammal. Indeed, researchers were able to narrow the globster's identity down to being a marine mammal at least, but beyond that, no one can really tell. Apparently, no one wanted to go through DNA testing of this putrid mass, and instead, it was simply buried by the locals. Next is the lance on shore. The long-nosed lancetfish is one of the larger deep-sea predatory fish and can dwell down to 6,000 feet in depth. They have a long dorsal sail and gelatinous muscles, yet are successful predators in the deep. Yet, for some reason, one which no one knows, lancetfish keep washing up on the Oregon coast. It's not a ton of them, and it's not very frequent, but it has been happening consistently for decades or even longer, and yet still, no one knows why. There are theories to be sure, but none are exactly sufficient. Some say these lancetfish are old and weak and simply get slowly washed into shore, unable to fight the current any longer. Others think it may be due to storms that wash them ashore, and yet others say it's actually caused by cold shocks, channels of very cold water that a fish may get into, causing immediate shock. Still, nothing has been proven, and the lancetfish mystery continues.
Lancetfish are quite common, and sometimes caught more frequently in the waters of Hawaii than even tuna and swordfish.
Next is the deep sea football.
It's called a Pacific football fish, and it's very rare that you actually get to see one, but a beachgoer in Southern California made this discovery.
The Pacific football fish, so named because it looks like a soccer or football, is a species of deep-sea anglerfish and is one of the best ambushers in the wild. They hide in the pitch black of the deep sea and use an adapted bioluminescent spine as a lure, drawing prey into ranges for their mouth to snatch out and grab. These fish dwell at a depth of some 2,000 to 3,000 feet, completely isolated from the light. So how then did the fish wind up 3,000 feet out of its home? How did it wind up on Laguna Beach in California? In truth, no one really knows, but there are a lot of theories, from a storm that churned up the deep sea water, or a cold shock that ended this fish, or even a deep sea disease. Who knows the real reason, but it seems that every once in a while, Crystal Cove, California gets a deep sea fleshy beach surprise. Next is the megamouth. The megamouth shark is a very large deep sea shark, and yet is the smallest of the filter feeders. It uses its fine interlocking teeth as a sieve, and its titular big mouth helps it gulp up large amounts of water and prey. Because they're such deep sea creatures, we know very little about them and only have a few studyable specimens. This 18-foot long shark washed up in the Philippines completely stunning scientists. It was pregnant with 7 pups. This was a massive discovery, as it not only tells us the potential average litter size, but also that megamouths give birth to live young, as opposed to some species that lay eggs. This is the first of many steps towards gaining a better understanding of these huge and strange deep sea creatures. Oh, and because, of course, nothing can ever be easy with science, no one knows why this shark was washed ashore. Next is the white whale. The white whale seems to have gotten tired of running from Captain Ahab and decided to spare him the satisfaction and beached itself. Of course, this isn't a vicious and combative sperm whale like in the book, it's instead a humpback, but it is still, obviously, a very big white whale. However, it didn't quite have albinism, as it did have spots of darker coloration on its skin. Researchers believe it had leucism, a genetic condition similar to albinism, but which doesn't quite affect all the pigment cells. It's unknown why this juvenile female humpback washed up on shore, and whether it had anything to do with its white skin or not, as many animals with albinism or leucism are often at greater threat from predators. And finally, the penguin apocalypse. The fairy penguins of Australia and New Zealand are an absolutely adorable species that live in small dens in protected sections of beach. Each penguin only grows to a foot tall maximum, and they spend all day in the water hunting before returning home for nightfall. But these penguins didn't return. In fact, a lot of them didn't. Multiple times, entire communities of penguins have washed up deceased at the same time. It's unknown what's causing this mass dying of fairy penguins, but as someone who has seen these little penguins return from the water and waddle to their nests, it truly hurts my heart to think of so many of these little penguins washing up at once.
In our number 10 spot, we have the pink creature. After the 2011 tsunami that hit Japan, a lot of mysterious items were found on the shore, one of which was a big pink creature that has never been seen before. To this day, researchers are still not sure what it was, as it was found pretty destroyed already. Its surface is very rock-like, unlike the smooth surface of whales, so it has been thought to be something other than a whale, but there is much speculation over this. It is seemingly something that scientists have never come across before. Due to the emergencies on the shore, it wasn't investigated much upon discovery, but once the people of the area had more time to study it, its surface appeared to be either eaten by birds or believed to have come off and pulled in by the water. It makes more sense that it was eaten, as all of its organs and bones were revealed, but who knows? In our number 9 spot, we have snow. Imagine, it's a hot summer day in Japan. Maybe you're a tourist. I don't live there, so I can't imagine what it's like to live there. Well, I could, but whatever, I'm not feeling creative today. Hopefully one day I'll know, because Japan looks super cool. Anyways, you decide, damn, what a hot day, I want to go to the beach. Then you get to the beach and it's as if you're in some kind of simulation as you see 4 backpacks lying on the beach. You think, which one should I choose, the water Pokemon or fire? You walk up to the backpacks, open one up to find snow. Not snow as in the cold substance that falls from the sky in the winter. Snow. Do you feel me? Hopefully you do. $48 million worth. You think, just a regular day in Yokosuka. Okay, just joking. But how crazy would that have been to have been the person that discovered this? 80 kilos of snow. For the record, I have a sweet spot for Charmander, so I would have gone with the fire Pokemon. In our number 8 spot, we have the Harley Davidson. This is an item that was from a Japanese shore, but washed up on a shore in Canada, and the story is so wild that I had to share. A Harley Davidson bike stored in a giant container crossed oceans to its final resting place in Canada. It was from Japan, but due to the 2011 tsunami, that is how it got there. Pretty wild to think of a Harley Davidson being pushed by the waves of the ocean only to cross the continent to end up in BC. When the owner was located, he decided to donate it to the Harley Davidson Museum in Wisconsin as a sort of memorial piece for all of those that lost their lives, including his own family members. I think that's pretty awesome. In our number 7 spot, we have rubber duckies. Rubber ducky, you're the one. You make swimming on a Japanese beach lots of fun. Rubber ducky, I'm awfully fun. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Okay, sorry, I couldn't help myself. I love rubber duckies, and for some odd reason, I just realized that I don't own one. Why? A bunch of rubber duckies washed up on a Japanese beach, the Kanyucha beach, and the people were loving it. Apparently these rubber duckies have traveled around the world and washed up on the beaches of Hawaii, the UK, South Africa, and the Arctic. There was obviously a shipment spill, as it is said that over 35,000 ducks were lost at sea. Was this an accident or on purpose? I feel like on purpose, to make the people of the world just happy to discover a rubber ducky. In our number 6 spot, we have the sign. A small village sign washed up on shore in 2013, and you may not think that this is a big deal at all and that we should not give it much attention, but it actually holds great significance to the village that it's from. Basically, it is from a small Japanese village called Tanohata, and it got pushed out into the sea after a massive earthquake hit the village and the surrounding area in 2011, and then the very destructible tsunami hit the country by storm. It traveled all the way to Hawaii before it was found and returned to the town. Pretty wild. In our number 5 spot, we have garbage. Well, I mean, this is sadly to be expected these days. I've traveled a lot in my life, and unfortunately you see people from everywhere leave litter on the beach. But this garbage in particular was astronomical, as all of the garbage found on Japanese shores in 2011 and for the next few years was due to the tsunami. The garbage also traveled with the tide as far as British Columbia, Canada. Thankfully, there were a number of volunteers from the area as well as Japanese volunteers that helped clean the garbage up. In our number 4 spot, we have the Lay's chips. Look, this one has never been identified as whether these chips were from a tourist or perhaps they came from overseas, like the Doritos chips were found along the shore of the North Carolina beach. If you haven't heard of that story, well, apparently a tractor trailer sized container washed up on the shore of a beach, and in it were hundreds of Doritos packets. Pretty awesome. If I had discovered this, I definitely would have thought that I had died. No way would I have discovered a container with free Doritos in real life. Maybe this was a marketing plant by the Lay's company, as, you know, maybe they wanted to steer the attention away from Doritos. In our number 3 spot, we have a soccer ball. This one made me happy to hear about, as I cannot even begin to imagine what it's like to have to suffer through a natural disaster and lose everything. The idea of thinking that you've lost everything and then someone from the other side of the world calls you up to say that they have found something of yours kind of makes me teary, not gonna lie. That's what happened for a Japanese student by the name of Misaki Murakami, who lost everything in the 2011 tsunami and got a phone call from someone in Alaska who had found his soccer ball wash up on shore. He of course was so happy to have one possession retrieved. How amazing. Can't even imagine how that must have felt. In our number 2 spot, we have 30 turtles. This one is honestly so hard to tell you about, so I just want to start off with karma. I don't understand why this was done, it's just honestly truly cruel. Basically, just recently in July of 2022, 30 turtles were found washed up on the shore of Kumajima Island, and they were severely injured. A few fishermen were questioned, and one admitted that they got caught in the nets and he entangled some to release them, but he couldn't free the heavy ones, so he had to try to get rid of them. Apparently these turtles are green sea turtles and are considered an endangered species by conservation groups. Police will be starting an investigation for animal cruelty. In our number 1 spot, we have a deep blue whale. A deep blue whale washed up on the shore of Japan's Kamakura city. This was a big deal, as this was the first ever sighting of the endangered whale in Japan. The whale was about 34.5 feet, that's 10.52 meters long, and even though that's definitely enormous, apparently scientists have said that it's not even that big, as this is clearly a baby whale. How the heck does it grow bigger? Does anyone ever think about the idea of giants just being the massive creatures in the sea?
Starting off on our number 10 spot, we have the Circle of Life. In May of 2017, on the coast of South Africa, there came quite the marine mystery that was leaving people absolutely shocked. During this time, there were 3 great white sharks that people found washed ashore. Definitely more than the average, I would assume, but that's not necessarily the most shocking thing in the world. What made this exceptionally strange, however, is that all of these sharks were missing their livers, and one of them was missing its heart. Yeah, that got a lot more weird, didn't it? Scientists, of course, did some more research into these sharks, and after performing autopsies, they came to a conclusion of what the most likely culprit is. Orcas. Also known as killer whales for now very obvious reasons, these guys are actually known to attack other shark species to eat their organs, and the injuries seen on the ones found on the beach are definitely consistent with all the orca attack signatures. Livers are definitely one of the orca's favorite snacks because they are so filled with fat and nutrients. In our number 9 spot today, we have the hairy sea monster. Back in 2018, this hairy sea monster washed up on a beach in the Philippines where people gave it the nickname the Globster. Other than the affectionate nickname, people were baffled as to what this hairy, globby thing could possibly be. The mass was about 20 feet or 6 meters long, and it was clearly some sort of gigantic but also rotting sea creature. Aside from the horrifying looks, apparently the smell was even worse, which honestly, just thinking about it makes my stomach turn. Scientists explained that it was most likely that this gross sea blob was the remains of a whale. Of course, people asked about the hairy appearance, which experts say is likely just the appearance of the decomposing muscle fibers. So, a mystery no more, but still quite a fright. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Maine monster. Back in 2018, along the coast of Maine, a 15-foot long sea monster made its debut. By the time this sea monster washed up on shore, it had already decomposed past the point of recognition, which definitely didn't help with its eerie and uncomfortable appearance. One of the people who witnessed it described it as a blob and called it, quote, pretty gross, which definitely paints a picture in my mind. The thing with this creature though is that it was quite large, which of course made people more interested in what it could be or what it once was. Because of the large size, again like the last one, people thought that perhaps it was the remains of a whale, but experts had a different story to tell. They said that this was in fact not a marine mammal, but rather a basking shark, which is the second largest shark species on the planet. In the end, an entire bulldozer was needed to remove this mass from the beach. In our number 7 spot today, we have the football fish. Okay, anglerfish are usually found in the deep sea. They're a super creepy looking fish. Many of their species are called sea devils because of how weird they look. If you've seen Finding Nemo, you know these guys. They have the little light bulb on their heads and they look incredibly menacing. So imagine someone's horror when they ended up stumbling upon one that had somehow washed up on shore. In May of 2021, so about a year ago now, a fisherman found the body of one of these creepy monsters at Crystal Cove State Park in California. It definitely was a shock, especially considering how this species of anglerfish, referred to as a Pacific football fish, is a type that usually spends its days about 3,000 feet or 914 meters below the surface of the ocean. Park officials were of course called to deal with the fish in the proper manner, but man, it definitely gave everyone who saw it quite the surprise. In our number 6 spot today, we have sea lions. One Vancouver Island resident made a pretty terrible discovery back in 2020 as she was walking along a beach in Nanaimo. During this walk, she unfortunately came across a sea lion that didn't have its head. Of course, this is never a good discovery, but matters were made much worse when she ended up finding 5 more sea lions in total with the same devastating injury. Of course, our instincts would be to think of some crazy and scary marine monster, but it turns out it's just the regular old land kind. What I mean by that is that a marine mammal expert for the area explained that the injuries are definitely deliberate, which means that there is someone or some people who are going around and doing this to sea lions. Just a good old classic terrible human being awful. The expert also explained that some of these sea lions are stellar sea lions, which are an at-risk species, which certainly makes the entire crime even worse than it already was. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Sakhalin sea wolf. This creature was found back in 2015, and when it was first discovered, people had absolutely no idea what in the world they were looking at. And to be honest, people still aren't exactly sure. Found on the shores of Sakhalin Island, which is located in eastern Russia, this is one creature creature that was stumbled upon by Russian soldiers. It had an elongated beak, which initially made people think that maybe it was the corpse of a dolphin, but people quickly pointed out that dolphins do not have fur, which was clearly seen on whatever this creature was. Some people even claimed to have seen paws on the creature, so really it's all up in the air at this point. Unfortunately, whatever this animal was is truly destined to stay a mystery because before a conclusion could be reached, it was washed back out to sea. In our number 4 spot today we have an eye. Florida is definitely no stranger to weird news and bizarre happenings, but this thing that washed up on a beach is definitely a little out of the ordinary for anywhere really. Back in 2012, as someone strolled along on Pompano Beach, which is said to be near Fort Lauderdale, they had the unfortunate circumstance of stumbling upon a perfectly intact eyeball that was about the size of a softball. Imagine. I'd never go to the beach again. This creepy discovery, of course, was handed over to the fish and wildlife researchers who were able to look into the ocular mystery a little further. They came to the conclusion that this eye once belonged to a swordfish, which, if they have eyeballs the size of softballs, how big are swordfish? Way bigger than I once thought, apparently. Also, how did this eye manage to find itself floating by itself in the ocean? Well, it is said that based on the precision that it was cut out with, rather than some crazy fish attack, it seems like it might have been cut out with a knife by a fisherman who then tossed it back into the sea where it became someone's horrific discovery. In our number 3 spot today we have worms. Okay, so there's this marine worm, often called a fat innkeeper worm, and well, it looks like, you know, a human body part. Okay? They look weird, they look inappropriate, but they are a very real creature and they were found washing up on the shores of California in mass amounts back in 2019. I'm talking thousands of these pink marine worms all over the beach. What a sight that would have been. Biologists suspected that the influx of beach to marine worms was due to a storm that produced strong winds and waves. This of course causes the sand to shift, which then breaks open the burrows that these guys make their homes in, and it brings them straight to the beach for some unsuspecting person to stumble upon and go, what the f happened here? In our number 2 spot today we have sea dragons. Australia has seen some record amounts of rainfall this year, and while that has brought up a ton of challenges, it's also brought some strange creatures to shore. It is said that there have been about 10 times the normal amount of sea dragons washing up on shores just last month. Dr. David Booth, who is a professor of marine ecology at the University of Technology, Sydney, explained what he thinks is the main culprit when he said, quote, "Clearly it's a result of some combination of the shocking weather, pollutants being washed into the ocean, and big surf." While these creatures can normally be found in Australian waters, it isn't normal for them to stray far from their homes. I mean, it's said that adults of the species only move about 50 to 500 meters away from where they were born, so they really like to stay put. Scientists are of course now conducting research to ensure that the populations of these animals stay at a level it should, especially considering how not too long ago they were a threatened species. In our number 1 spot today we have the Bondi Beast. Okay, so remember how with the sea dragons I was talking about how Australia has seen some weird creatures washed up on shore lately? Well, here's another one. This creature washed up on Bondi Beach only for a jogger to come across just last month. The jogger who came across it took a video of it and posted it to Facebook with the caption, "Can someone please tell me what this weird alien-like creature is that washed up on the beach at Bondi today?" This strange creature is said to be about half a meter long with human-like lips and skin that is similar to a shark's. Of course, once the video went viral, many people with some good ideas came through, and as of right now there are some people who agree on what possibly may be the most likely answer. Basically, they think that this strange animal may be a decomposing coffin ray with, quote, ballooned intestines. So, still quite a gruesome discovery, despite it maybe not being a mystery any longer.
Number 10, a beach of glass. Glass Beach is a famous place in Fort Bragg, California, as it is basically a living, breathing art project courtesy of nature. The area used to be a former city landfill between 1906 to 1967, where people threw their cans, batteries, bottles, etc. Sadly, it was commonplace for people to just dump their trash over cliffs, and unfortunately, we aren't so much better now in terms of littering. But over the years, nature took our trash and spat out something absolutely beautiful. The once sharp shards of glass bottles and trash were smoothed and rounded by the waves to create a trove of glistening rainbow glass. Now the once garbage dump is a treasured site full of rainbow glass, all because nature decided to just keep doing its thing and make a beautiful thing. Now if we could only figure out how to do the same thing, the whole world would be an even more beautiful place. Number 9, Doritos. Like a lot of them. If you're a fan of the cheesy, crispy goodness that is the Dorito, then I bet you wish you were the person who discovered a massive container of Doritos on the beach. Like a beached whale back in 2006 on Frisco, thousands of bags of Doritos spilt from a shipping container. They had just had incredibly bad weather in the area, and it was presumed that the container tumbled off of the ship while in transit. Usually, heavy containers like that sink to the bottom because they're heavy, but locals say the storm can be blamed for the Dorito delivery. Looks like it was a good day to go to the beach, especially since there were snacks in abundance, which we all know is what we need when we lay down our towels and dive into the water. Snack. Number 8, a message in a bottle. This story is actually very beautiful, so be prepared for some feels sailing your way. I'm not talking about the song by the Police, I'm talking about an actual message in a bottle that was found by a fisherman with a picture and a note inside that read, and I quote, "My name is Mel, I have 3 beautiful kids and a beautiful wife of almost 54 years when I passed. I love the ocean, deep sea fishing, abalone hunting with my 2 sons, and visiting the tide pools with the whole family. Today my family is laying me to rest in a place that I love, the ocean. So this starts my journey. If you find this message in a bottle, please go to my Facebook page, post a pic of yourself and where you found me, and send me back on my journey. Thanks and God bless, Mel's family." Yeah. It's okay to cry. Take a moment to go get a tissue. I'll ask to post a link to the Facebook page, so if you're curious you can check it out below, but it'll be down there. Number 7, booger sugar. A lot of weird things happen in Florida, but boy oh boy was civil engineer Angie Chambers shocked to discover 30 kilograms of party powder on a beach. One day while driving on the beach this past May, Angie saw dozens of these packages strewn all over the sand. They washed ashore at the Cape Canaveral space station of all places in Florida. Florida, right? And were immediately seized once they discovered the sneezing snow inside. The estimated value of the 24 packages of devil's dandruff is around $1.2 million. The origin of the high supply is still under investigation, but one thing's for sure, whoever lost that stuff is like really pissed off. Good riddance. Number 6, 180 million year old fossil. If you were around 180 million years ago, you might have been anything but excited to see a massive ichthyosaurus on the beach. Basically, the prehistoric version of the bluefin tuna, but a little more terrifying because it was huge. But professional fossil collector Tony Gill was over the moon when he uncovered one on the Dorset coast in England. Beneath the sand and abandoned cans of dandelion and burdock, Gill found one of the largest specimens ever found, over 40 feet long. Dorset is known as England's Jurassic coast, but that didn't inhibit the surprise and delight when Tony went a-diggin'. After a week of rain, there were large nodules that appeared on the beach. A lot of people go looking for ammonites, which are pretty common, but Tony kept digging, and thank goodness he did. What looked to be just fossilized wood became the discovery of a lifetime for Tony. Go Tony! Love that for him. Number 5! Rubber ducks. Who doesn't love a nice little rubber duck to play with in the bath, you know? Answer, no one. It's like a damn ducky delight for bath time, which is exactly where they should stay. So when over 28,000 rubber ducks washed ashore in 1992, people had a lot of questions. Turns out, a massive cargo ship container carrying these floaty friends tumbled into the North Pacific whilst on their way to the US. They scattered across the Atlantic shores, boggling beach lovers everywhere. Journalist Donovan Hone became fascinated with the journeys these little ducks might make across the 7 seas and dedicated years to tracking their journey. He followed them to Seattle, to Alaska, to Hawaii, to China and the Arctic. He even wrote a book and called it Moby Duck, the true story of 28,800 bath toys lost at sea, and the beachcombers, oceanographers, environmentalists, and fools, including the author, who went in search of them. If that doesn't sound like the title of a Monty Python sketch, then I don't know what does. But I want to read it. Number 4, a severed foot, or severed feet, I should say, with no other body parts in their wake. There is actually a map that is tracking the amount of severed feet that are found across beaches in and around the Pacific Northwest. In 2019, the 15th foot belonging to Antonio Neal, who went missing in December 2016, washed up on the shores of the Salish Seas. Usually, the feet are found still tucked within buoyant running shoes, which could provide a reason as to why feet are usually found. When a body decomposes, the joints tend to begin to separate, with the feet leading the charge, especially if they are attached to something that floats, i.e. a running shoe. There's a reason no one has washed ashore wearing a pair of cheap heels. So that could be one explanation, but exactly how these people passed away still remains a mystery. And we're getting to our top 3. If you like this video so far, you know what to do. Remember to like, follow, comment, let us know what you like, what you don't. We're here for you and we love your love. Number 3, a World War II fighter plane. Buried beneath the waves and sand of a beach in Wales lies a World War II fighter jet known as the Maid of Harlech. Thankfully, its story isn't as tragic as you thought it would be, but it's still pretty cool. The plane has been there for over 60 years since it crashed, being uncovered and then reburied by decades of flowing tides. The plane was crashed by 2nd Lieutenant Robert F. Elliott whilst on a gunnery practice mission. Less than an hour into his journey, after climbing 6,000 feet in the air, the engine died for some reason. After trying to fix it with manual controls, he then decided to land. But before he made it to the landing strip, the right engine died. So instead, he glided onto the beach, landing in 2 feet of water. Robert survived without a scratch, and due to salt damage, they never recovered the plane. But Robert sadly went missing 2 months later while in action. Perhaps one day he too will wash onto the shores, and he, like this plane, will slowly be revealed by the rising tide. Number 2. Buried treasure. Ooh, something we all wish to find. Whether it's while snorkeling or scuba diving, everyone dreams of accidentally encountering some kind of treasure lost amongst the waves. For a few lucky individuals, this has happened, and today we are talking about an incredible discovery made by Zach Moore and his family. Moore is a diver and engineer at Mel Fisher's Treasures in the Key West and comes from a legacy of treasure hunters. Moore was searching the wreckage of the Nuestra Senora de Atocha, and I probably said that wrong. If I did, correct me, go for it. A ship that went down in the Florida Keys in 1622. Dreams became reality when he got sight of something shiny around 30 feet below the surface, a glistening gold coin, a rare Atocha coin. Moore stated, quote, "There's nothing like finding treasure first of all, but there's nothing like finding gold. Gold shines forever. It looks and feels exactly the same as the day it went down 400 years ago." Unquote. Just how valuable was this 400-year-old coin, you ask? Oh, just a measly $98,000. For a coin this big. Wow. They added that to their collection of 120 gold coins that they've collected over the years and continue their search for more of the lost treasure. If one of those coins costs that much, imagine. Wow. I could eat all the ramen I wanted. And lastly, number 1. A giant Lego man. When you walk along the beach, you may expect to find the usual pieces of trash among the shells and fish that were up on the shore. But in 2012, down in Sarasota, Florida, again, Florida, what a weird place. Employees at a beachside bar noticed a strange unknown creature bobbing in the waves. They never expected it to be a life-sized Lego toy. Well, not quite life-sized unless one of the employees was like 8 feet tall and 100 pounds. Written on the fiberglass shirt were the words, "No real than you are." Spokeswoman for the nearby Legoland that just opened said that it had nothing to do with the strange appearance, though similar objects had appeared the same way in Holland in 2007 and England in 2008. No one claimed the Lego man, so the beach decided to claim the right to finders keepers. There are some theories about whether an artist was behind it, but the case still remains open.
Alright, let's start off with a super recent one. This mysterious object that washed to shore in Greenhead Beach in Australia. A big cylindrical object covered in barnacles washed up on shore. Beachgoers and authorities were completely dumbfounded as to what it could be. As of now, there are no official statements on what the object might be or where it even came from, but some members of the Australian Space Agency speculate it could be from a rocket. But of course, everyone's been coming up with their own ideas as to what this object could be, ranging from marine debris to fragments of lost machinery or even extraterrestrial origins. But one hypothesis was that it could be a piece of the missing flight MH370 that disappeared back in 2014. Unfortunately though, authorities have denied that, saying that the object is not part of a plane. Plus, if it were part of that plane, the object would be in far worse condition, seeing as that flight went down like 9 years ago, so it would have a bit more than just barnacles covering it. But at this point, we'll just have to wait and see. Next up, we have the mermaid. This is another very recent finding, just like a week ago at the time
time we're recording this video. This is a puzzling picture of mysterious remains found on an Australian beach, which has got a lot of people talking online, including marine life experts. The skeletal remains resembled a mermaid kind of shape, and they were discovered by 34-year-old Bobby Lee Oates while walking along Keppel Sands, Queensland. Oates described the creature as approximately 6 feet long, with a human-shaped skull, an elongated jawline, and hair resembling that of a cow or kangaroo, though some hair was missing due to a decomposition. The remains appeared to have a tail or limb of some sort too. Really freaky looking thing to come across while on a stroll at the beach. Oates shared her findings in the marine biology Facebook group. Experts like Rob DeVille from UK Cetacean Strandings Investigation Program suggested the possibility of it being a small cetacean species. However, due to unfamiliarity with the region's typical species, he couldn't really confirm any further. Next up, we have the beaked whale. On May 15th, 2022, the remains of a beaked whale were found on a California beach located in Jug Handle State Natural Reserve. Experts were a bit puzzled as to what actually happened to the creature though. It was covered in scrapes and scratches, and they were unable to determine exactly how it died. Now, that's not all that strange. I mean, the ocean, it's a big place, right? A lot can go down there, but they were also unsure as to exactly what species of beaked whale they were dealing with here. There are said to be about 24 different species of these animals, many of which haven't been studied all that extensively because they're very rare to see alive or dead for that matter, and can dive pretty deep, and they spend a lot of time down there, so it's a pretty interesting find. And at number 7, we have the giant eyeball. In 2012, a mysterious giant eyeball washed ashore on Pompano Beach, leaving experts baffled about where, or more importantly, what this thing came from. The eyeball was roughly the size of a softball and initially sparked various speculations among marine biologists and the fine folks of the internet, of course. Some hypothesized it belonged to a giant squid or a colossal squid due to its size and appearance. Others thought that it could be maybe from a large fish species, like a big shark. However, further analysis and examination of the eye's structure and the genetic material eventually led to solving the mystery. A research administrator for Florida's Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Tom Reinert, was able to determine that the eyeball came from a large swordfish, which was later confirmed by comparing the DNA from the eye with samples taken from swordfish species. Yeah, swordfish, they just have really big eyes. They swim at depths of like 1,640 to 8,200 feet below the sea, and it gets pretty dark down there. Number 6, gold. Back in September of 2020, residents of a small village in Venezuela got quite a pleasant surprise. It all started when Johan Laris, a 25-year-old fisherman, found a gold medallion with an image of the Virgin Mary washed up on the beach. The news spread pretty quickly among the villagers, and many others started finding their own treasures, mostly like gold rings. This would be an incredible find for anyone, but it was especially amazing for these struggling villagers, selling some of the pieces for $1,500 to buy much needed food. Times have been very tough, especially considering when all this was taking place, 2020, the year everyone tries their best to forget. Vaca and neighboring villages in the Paria Peninsula, once major suppliers of sardines and canned tuna, had suffered severely due to economic collapse. Many sardine warehouses closed, and government-run tuna canning factories had gone out of business. Now, as to the origin of the gold, that remains a mystery, which is kind of cool. Various theories began circulating though among the villagers, and again, the fine folks of the internet. Some thought it could be linked to folklore and legends of like sunken pirate ships. Tests on the treasure and jewelry determined it could have been of European origin and was made in recent decades though. And more good news, since the discovery, the village has experienced positive changes. Sardines have returned to the shores after like a 4-month absence at the time. Gasoline supply had improved following significant shortages. Many locals saw this fortunate turn of events as some sort of divine intervention, attributing the gold's appearance to a higher power setting its agenda. How about that? Positive story for once. Next up, we have headless penguins. And that's more like it, right back to the usual. Can't have more than one good story in a row. Back in April of 2022, dozens of headless penguins started washing up on shore in Australia. In April, approximately 20 penguin bodies washed ashore on South Australia's Fleur Peninsula beaches, surpassing the total penguin deaths in the area for the entirety of 2021. Stephen Hedges, a Flinders University volunteer, collected these dead animals for scientific study to understand the cause of these decapitations. Hedges and others discovered both the penguin bodies and their severed heads, and direct human involvement was ruled out since the deaths occurred at sea. But Hedges speculated that fishing boat propellers might be responsible due to the high number of vessels in the area at the time. In a typical year, 10 to 20 dead penguins washed up on shore, but the sudden increase in April of that year raised concern among scientists. Hedges mentioned a tuna fishing competition off Encounter Bay could have attracted penguins near boats. Tourism during the Easter and Anzac weekends may have also played a role as visitor numbers increased. Some tourists walked along the beaches with dogs, potentially affecting the penguins. Fox predation was considered as another possibility. Scientists explored other theories including waves, currents, and climatic conditions causing the decapitations, but the scale of these deaths made that explanation a bit less likely. Number 4, I'm just gonna call this one the Philippines monster. So back in September of 2017, this massive sized creature washed up on the island of Leyte. The creature was never 100% identified as it was in a pretty bad state. Not sure if you can tell by these pictures, but decomposition is in full effect here. This thing is most likely a whale, but still, what a sight. This looks like a scene out of Jurassic Park or something, or Star Wars. Kind of looks like a Star Wars type creature. Nuge Capistrano had been walking along the beach when he spotted the carcass, saying, quote, "I was just passing by the beach and took some photos. I was surprised because it's too big and it's the first time I saw that kind of creature. The creature was already dead when I saw it. The smell was too bad. I can't describe it, but it was a bad smell." Yeah, no kidding. It does not look like it smells good. Up next, we have the Ainsdale anomaly. On Wednesday, July 29th, 2020, a man who wished to remain anonymous discovered the carcass of this thing on Ainsdale Beach in England. The man stated that, quote, "It had 4 flippers which made it look most weird. It was furry. It was approximately 15 feet long. It had bones sticking out everywhere, approximately 4 feet long. Some of them stunk too." Yeah, surprised that thing wouldn't smell good. It looks so appetizing. Photos of this mess were shared online and everyone started speculating as to what it was, with some saying it looked like the remains of a woolly mammoth, a horse. I definitely see that. Or a whale. I do not see that. But then again, whatever it is, or was rather, it's very decomposed, so who knows. All I know is if I came across this thing while trying to just have a relaxing stroll down the beach, I'd be incredibly disappointed. Like, it's an interesting find, sure, but like sometimes I just don't really feel like vomiting. You know, call me crazy. Next up, we have feet. So since 2007, around 21 human feet have washed up onshore in British Columbia and Washington State, the bodies of which have never been found, for the most part anyway. A handful have been solved, like the most recent finding in 2019, a foot in a boot, which was linked back to a man named Antonio Neal, who had gone missing 3 years prior. Pretty disturbing thing to find, but also quite confusing. Why just feet? For a long time, people feared that maybe a certain type of sadistic criminal or criminals were responsible, taking the lives of their victims before dismembering them. But in December of 2017, the BC Coroner's Service made a statement that foul play had been ruled out, saying that the feet looked as if they were separated in the natural decomposition process, and that these were the remains of people who had either died in accidents or taken their own lives. The reason why the feet were discovered but not the rest of the bodies is because they were mostly found in sneakers, which helped protect the feet and made them buoyant enough so that they would eventually float to shore. Still pretty macabre. And coming in at number 1, we have the Montauk Monster. In July 2008, a super weird, freaky looking creature washed up on the beach in Montauk, New York, caused a massive stir because nobody could figure out what this adorable creature was. The thing had no hair, It was all bloated, had these gnarly sharp teeth and claws. Looks like it kind of has a bit of a snout too. People went kind of crazy, and pics of the creature spread like wildfire online. Everyone had their own theories about this mysterious beast. Some said it might be a decomposed raccoon. I think that's the most likely case. Others thought it could be a sea turtle, like really, or some exotic animal. Some even wonder if it was all just a big prank or prop from a movie. The media went nuts. I'm sure most of you have seen images of this thing before, right? Experts and local officials were scratching their heads too, but nobody could say for sure what it really was.